Welcome back, and now we're finally going to get to write our first computer program in C#. So let's start off and load up Visual Studio. All right, and the first thing we're going to do, and we're trying to get into a routine of how we create programs all the time. We're going to get a particular routine down. So first of all, we'll go to File, New Project. All right, and there's several types of C# programs that you can write. We're going to focus in on Windows form applications. Okay, there's other sites on Udemy that teach C# and they spend a lot of time doing console apps. I'm not going to do that. I'm going to go straight to the fun stuff, the cute little things that you can see on screen, because we're very visual. We're going to do a lot of user interface applications. So we're going to pick that one 99% of the time. Okay, so we're just going to gently click on it once first, and now I want you to focus on here. I'm going to rub out this, and what we're going to do is we're going to call this our first app. That's what we're going to call our application, and that will be the directory name, and inside of there there'll be a bunch of other little files, and the program file that will get everything going is also going to be called first app. That's kind of like, you can change that if you want, but I usually match the folder name to the app solution name. Okay, I always try to get those to match. Next thing is really, really important. Make sure the computer is pointing to the exact folder where you want to save all your stuff. Okay, so let me press browse for a second again. So let's pretend you were on your temp drive and then you worked your way to the folder where you want to put everything. And like I mentioned in the previous demo lecture, I've made a folder called Lecture Demos. And inside of there is where I'm going to put everything I do in this course. Okay, whether you load down the material that I've given you or you're saving your own stuff, we're going to put it into that particular folder. And then I'm going to press select folder, and what you'll see down here is that it now says every time you save something, it'll always be in the lecture demo. Okay, I think we're ready to press OK. All right, and you give it a couple of seconds, and what it's going to do is it's going to show you a blank screen, so to speak. We call that the form. And you're going to have tools on the left-hand side and some other material over on the right, which I'll explain to you in a second. So actually, let's take a look around the screen and make sure we acquaint ourselves with all the different parts. So the main screen, where you're going to put all your controls, buttons, pictures, whatever you want to put here. Okay, we call that the form, okay, or the user design form. Okay. On the left-hand side here, where you're going to drag things like boxes and pictures and things like that, we call that the toolbox. All right, that's where all your tools are. And there's actually a lot more tools than you see there. And later on, as we get more sophisticated in the course, I'll show you how to import more tools into that toolbox. On the right-hand side is what we call the File Explorer, Solution Explorer. Okay, and what that does is show you some of the bits and pieces, not all of them, but some of the bits and pieces that make up your actual application. Okay, so there's the form, there's the starter application, and you notice these two have the ending .cs, which stands for C#. Okay, and there's other things up here which we'll talk about as we go along. The last important part of your screen is the property settings. And again, you won't know what these mean or do until I show you our actual program that we're going to work on today, but these are your properties. Okay, so those are the main four parts of the screen, and we're going to use them today to create our first computer program. Okay, so how do you create a program? What are the steps? Well, what I like to do, and I like to do this all the time, is first thing I like to do is give everything meaningful names. So over here where it says Form 1, that doesn't mean anything to me. So I'm going to rename it, and I'm going to call it, and I'm going to always be kind of following some rules. So forms are always going to start with FRM, and then you can name them whatever you want. So this is our first app, so I'm going to call it Form First App. And don't rub out the .cs. That's really important. If you do that, you're going to mess up the program. Now I'll click away. The computer will give me a little brief warning, and then I'll press yes. And now what we've done is change the name of the form to Form First App. Now, let's click on the form itself. This title is not that good. I don't like that. I like to have something more, illustrative of what we're going to do in the particular example. So now we got to go down here to these things called properties. And there's all these different settings that you can change. Actually, we've changed one sort of indirectly by changing the name of the form. And here it is right there. We're going to slide down to a property called text. So this is alphabetical. And notice how it says form 1. We're going to call this first app. And when I click away from it, now the title up here changes. Okay, so now what I'm doing is I'm changing the properties of this form. Next, let's go up here and there's a property called back color. Let's see what that does. I'm going to pick custom and I'm going to pick sort of a light yellow. Okay, so there's another property I've changed. Now I've changed the back color of the form. And there's some other things that you can do. You can have it so that the form, when it starts up, goes right in the middle of the screen. So there's something called startup position, and we can make it go center screen. All right, and you can fool around some more later on with those properties. You can't wreck anything. Sometimes it won't look as good as what it was before, but you can change it back to something else. All right, so now I'm pretty happy with that. Then what I do is, and I always get nervous about this when I'm doing something big and important, do a save, but not just a save, do a save all. Because as we get more complicated in these programs, there's going to be more than one screen. There might be multiple screens. So this is the safest way to save everything. So I'll do a save all. All right, I'm just happy that every time I do something important, I save in bits and pieces just in case something happens, the computer crashes or whatever, the power goes out. Okay, now let's get used to using some of these controls here. There's several hundred of them. We're only going to use maybe a half dozen to a dozen, but let's start off and use the most basic one. It's called a label control. So I'm going to press it once, then I'm going to move over to the screen and I'm going to make a big rectangle. And labels are used for titles, okay? And again, we're going to follow some rules. So now that the label is highlighted, clicked on it with that little dot, I'm going to go over to properties. And all labels are always going to start off with LBL, like that, and I'm going to call this one label title. Now, that didn't change anything there. All that did was name that control, that little object there. So what I'm going to do now is slide down to text, like I showed you a few minutes ago, and what I'm going to do here is I'm going to call this welcome to my program. All right, so that'll be the title right there. Now, there's other kinds of things you can do to this title. You can change the font size, you can change the color of it. There's the font right there, actually. And if you don't like that font, when you press on that, it'll pop up and you can change it to a different style font. You can make it bold. You can change the size of it, and then you press OK, and now it's a different size and a different look. Next control I want to show you is the text box. Used quite a bit, and we're going to press it here. And we're going to make a little rectangle here. The text box is used when a user has to type in information. Now in this example, I'm just putting it up here. We're not going to actually use the information the person types in there. We'll do that in a later example, but I wanted to illustrate what a text box looks like. And again, let's make sure we follow the same technique every single time. We're going to name our text boxes always as TXT. And then I'm just going to say user name here. So I'm going to ask the person who's using it to type in their name there. Okay. So you don't use any text in this one. Now, I guess if you did put some text in there, you could say this is like the default. If you wanted to put that in there, let's see what happens when I do that. There's a word default there. Okay. If you don't want that there, you can leave it out. But that's a text box. We'll use that in a second. The most fun is when you start putting images and pictures on your screen. So how do you put a picture on your screen to make it look, nice? Well, there's a thing called picture boxes, a control. We're going to press it. We're going to make a decent sized rectangle there, and that's where our picture is going to go. Now, same technique. Make sure you understand this. And when I've taught this over the years, some students say, sir, come on, please, I don't like doing this part. But yes, you have to name all your objects, because later on, as we get more sophisticated, we're going to refer to those objects, and they have to have a set name that makes sense. So picture title, we'll call it pick title, okay? And then we're going to click away for it for a second. Now here's a common mistake students do. I'm not finished this yet. I actually haven't put a picture in yet, but by accidentally clicking away from it, when I go over here, You're going, what? Where's the stuff for the picture stuff? Well, you are looking now at the form. What if you pressed here? You'd be looking at the label title. If you pressed here, you'd be looking at text. So make sure you know that you're supposed to be on this when you're going to change properties associated with that. So the most important property we need to change right now is we need to load in an image. So there's an image property. And right now it says there's no image. Yeah, that's true. We're going to press the 3 dots. And we're going to pick something from our local hard drive. And we're going to press import. Now, you've got to find something on your computer that's an image. I happen to know I have some images stored on this machine. I'm going to go to a folder called Images, and I'm just going to double click on this one. And then I'm going to press OK. Now, don't freak out. Sir, you loaded in the picture. Where is it? Well, the picture is so big relative to that little itsy bitsy box that we need to sort of scale it down. So there's another property. We'll slide down here to Size, Mode, and we'll put it on Stretch. And there's our image. Okay, let's finish up with buttons. And I'm going to put 2 buttons on the screen. One's going to do something like say hello to you, and the other one's going to exit out of the program. Okay, so there's a button. We're going to throw one there, and we'll throw another one there. And again, let's be consistent. Buttons. So this first one here is going to be my welcome button. So buttons I'm always going to call BTN, and I'm going to call this one welcome. Now it doesn't actually say welcome when you do that, so you got to slide down to text, and where it says text, we're going to write down welcome. That's the first button. The second button is going to be my exit button. So that one I'm going to call BTN exit. And again, that word's not going to show up on the button. So you're going to slide down to text. And where it says button 2, I'm going to type in exit. Okay, now properties for buttons, you can also change the look of them, the background color and things like that. For now, we're going to leave them alone. And I'm going to do a save. I haven't done a save in a while. And I'm going to run it. And let's see what it does. Okay, give it a few seconds to compile. This is the first time that the program's run. There it is in the middle of the screen because we have a property called center screen. Beautiful. There's the word default. I'm going to type in my name there instead. These buttons don't do anything though, okay? But this is a real first computer program. It's got a nice title. It's got a little box there for information. It's got a little graphic and a couple of buttons. Okay, now let's put some intelligence to this program. Let's make it think and then react. Okay, now when you react to something, that's called an event. And one of the first events we're going to look at today is called the click event. So I'm going to double click on the welcome button, and I'm going to go into the underground. Now here you got to be careful. Okay, don't go driving around anywhere else. You landed right here, stay there and start typing there. Don't decide to type in here. Don't decide to type up here because it won't work. All right, so wherever it puts you, stay there and start typing. And I'm going to teach you a couple of words now. These are special computer words, C# words. The one we're going to do right now is called message box dot. Okay, and what follows is one of the special things that belong to the message box command. And the one that we're going to use is called show. But then you need a bracket. What we're going to put in there is the word welcome. And here's the thing that's going to drive you crazy in this entire course. Each C# command needs to finish up with a semicolon. If you don't put the semicolon in, it's going to be a mistake. Now, you're in the underground, so to speak. How do you get back up to the top? Well, here you go up here, and you're back up to the top. And you can do a save again. Always be consistent. And then we press Start to run the program. There's our program again. You can type in your name in there again. And this time when I press Welcome, look at that. That is called a message box, and it's got the word welcome on it, and press OK to stop it. Okay, let's finish up and program this exit button. And again, how do you get to code it? Because we have to go into the underground, into the code. So you double click, and this event that we're doing is called the click event. And I probably didn't focus on it enough in my first example, but notice how it has the word click there, click. So we're using the button click event. There's other events. There's a button mouse over, and there's other ones I'm going to teach you this semester. But right now we're focusing on the click event. And again, don't go walking around crazy. Stay where the computer puts you. And the way that you tell the computer to exit out of this program, this is one of the ways. There's several ways. This is the first way I'm going to show you, is you say the word this dot close and it'll close the program. And again, let's go back up to the top into the screen, do a little save all, okay? Try to get into good habits, press run. There's our screen again. Type in whatever you want. You can say welcome again, that's still working. You can press exit and it exits out of the program. Now, if you've been following along and you got everything to work, congratulations. But even myself, things go wrong. Things don't always work out. So let me give you a couple of for instances that might have happened while you were doing this little example program. Let's double click in here. This is the most common thing that can go wrong. The infamous, you forgot the semicolon. Okay, so let's pretend you forgot it, you pressed start to run it, and you get this message. Okay, don't freak out. There's an error. Now, what it'll do is it'll say, would you like to continue and run from the last successful build, which means, I know you screwed up here, but you want to go back to the one that worked and run it? No, I don't want to do that because I made a mistake. Let's see how we fix it. So press no. Now, sometimes it'll be nice enough and highlight the general area where your error is. In this case, it does. And then you fix it. And then you press start and it works. Okay, so we're going to talk more about what is called debugging as we get more sophisticated in the program, but that's basically what you should do if that happens. Another thing I've seen students do over the years is accidentally make things disappear. And I'll show you what I mean. Somehow they accidentally come over here and then, oh, it's gone. And you go, oh, sir, where's my properties? I'm trying to set properties. If that ever happens to you, don't worry about it. Go up to view, and these are all the little things that you can add on to your thing. Now I'm looking for properties. Properties, where are you? Properties. Do you see properties somewhere? There it is. Properties window, bang, it comes back there. Okay, so if you ever lose one of these screens, chances are you can go here and find it out. There's Solution Explorer if you lose this little thing here, okay? There's Toolbox if you lose Toolbox. So hopefully if you've gotten little errors, you'll be able to react to them and fix them up. So there you go. There's your first little program. And what you should do now is create one similar to this, but do it yourself. Put your own little graphics on it, different background screen, maybe make up a little different message here instead of welcome. Do what you want so you start to feel comfortable using C#. So if you got this to work out, great going. If you didn't, don't worry about it, keep plugging away.